Anyway, this actually happened to me while I was going to high school. My friend Vance was wandering around his backyard, and his property backed up to I-640 there in Knoxville, Tennessee, where they were building an interstate bypass, and he found in his backyard a case of dynamite. Now, he opened the case, and there was some missing, so he didn't figure they had missed 4 more sticks. So he got the sticks and the fuses and the blasting caps. He closed the lid, went back to his house and told his parents that there was a case of dynamite in the backyard, which was probably a good thing to do. And then he told me and our friend Joe. Now, Joe said that he had read somewhere that during World War II, when the Germans got low on explosives, they put aluminum shavings into the dynamite, and it made it more powerful. And Vance said, well, there was only one way to find out if that was true or not. And so we decided to go out to Asbury, where there was a quarry out there with a pond that was frozen over at the wintertime like it was, and it usually froze with about 4 to 6 inches of ice. We thought what we would do was put aluminum in one of those sticks of dynamite, and Joe did the research and found out how to do it, and him and Vance mostly did it. And I got an old antenna from a TV antenna, and we shaved it down, and we did that, and then we got some rocks and tied the dynamite to the rocks and made the one fuse longer than the other. So what we thought we'd do is we cut a hole in the ice and drop the dynamite in, and then when the first one exploded, it would be without the aluminum, and we could see, we expected to see, when it went off, we expected to see the bubbles and everything come up and maybe raise the ice a little bit, and then see how it was when the bigger one went off, when the bigger one went off, and see what it did. And that way we would see if putting aluminum in it made it more powerful. Well, we went down to Asbury, and sure enough, the pond was good and frozen over. And we cut a hole in the ice, about 1 foot, lit the fuses, dropped the dynamite into the hole, and then as best we could, we made our way off that ice. Just as we got off the ice, the first stick went off. Kaboom! And the ice along the edge of the pond just kind of folded back. It went, and then that whole sheet of ice in one piece rose up out of the water. The only thing that stayed on the ground was our jaws. We, at the same time, realized that what goes up must come down, and we beat feet out of there. We hit the parking lot just as this guy with a truck drives in. He had evidently heard the explosion, jumps out of the truck and says, "What are you boys doing?" And I said, "Run in," and pointed over my shoulder. He looked over there just as that ice was clearing the tops of the trees. He began to scream like a 12-year-old girl. As that ice came up, we jumped and hid behind the car. That ice comes up over the trees, and then it kind of tilts forward. As it starts to come down, it gets hung in the top of the tree. And the morning sun, it being about dawn, made that whole piece of ice glow. And that hole that we had cut in the middle, this kind of sunbeam comes shooting through that hole. It looked like a sunbeam coming through that hole. And it made the whole thing just kind of opaque, and it was gorgeous. And it kind of hung in that tree, and it kind of pivoted around, and that beam of light caught every house in that neighborhood. And when it passed over that guy in the parking lot, he dropped to his knees, and his scream went up about 12 octaves. We jumped in the car and took off. No, we didn't either. That happened later. What happened next was that ice began to fall back into the pond. And then, kaboom! Let me tell you something. Them Germans was right. When that second stick of dynamite went off, it completely vaporized that piece of ice, threw all the water out of that pond, left that whole neighborhood wet and a big rainbow in the sky that you could see it from any angle. That's when we got in the car and took off, because we was beginning to hear the sirens of the police coming. We took off. We went up to Gorenflow Mountain and buried them other 2 sticks of dynamite up on Gorenflow Mountain in a big ammo box. And then we went home and hid at our rooms the rest of the night, that day. And the next day in the paper, I got to get my glasses on. This is what was reported in the paper. I had to get this off of the microfiche because I couldn't get the actual paper. It was too old. But anyway, this is what it said. UFO seen over Asbury. Residents of the Asbury community were awakened early Saturday morning by a loud explosion followed by a UFO rising out of the quarry. Elwood Logan said he heard the explosion. I was driving by the old quarry and I heard a loud noise and saw these 3 young men running out of the woods. Elwood explained. Then I saw it. It was rising out of the quarry just over the trees. Them boys was running from that thing. Martha Toops said she thought she heard her 12-year-old daughter screaming. She ran outside. Sarah said she wasn't screaming, but she had never seen anything like it in her life. It came out of the old quarry. It was beautiful. It was kind of opaque, and you could see this shaft of power at the center. It had a brightness about it that made you want to cover your eyes. Many people in the area claimed to have seen the brightness coming through their windows. Tom Stone said he saw what looked like a tractor beam focused on the tube house. I sure hope nobody got abducted, he said. Elwood too said, I could feel the heat of that tractor beam as it crossed over me. It headed toward where them boys went. I sure hope them boys didn't get abducted. I hope they're okay. I never saw them again. Although no one has been reported missing, there is an investigation underway. Martha said it made a loud noise and vanished in a mist of water, leaving a rainbow in a clear blue sky. Well, the Wolf family up the holler said they saw it, and Sam said it must have been powered by water, as it left the whole neighborhood wet. The government should look into that. It'd sure be cheaper than gasoline. And there was also an unrelated story about a family that lived in construction route of I-40 that had returned a case of dynamite they found in their backyard. Now, the story would naturally end there, except that my daughter now lives in Knoxville, Tennessee, and she noticed that in the paper last week there was a big article about a celebration in Asbury celebrating the 50th anniversary of aliens visiting the area. There's going to be costumes of little green men. There's going to be all kinds of art shows and everything with UFO. There's even going to be a pie eating contest. Pie. And there's going to be all kinds of events. Well, I called Vance and Joe. They now live in North Carolina and Michigan. And I called them and I said, told them about it. And they said, wow, that'd be really good. That'd be fun to go to. And Joe said that he had read that dynamite gets real unstable with it as it gets old. And Vance said, well, there wasn't but one way to find out. And I thought, if we got there early in the morning and that pond was frozen over, Vance said he was headed for Gorenflow Mountain. And I think, wouldn't y'all like to join me there up at Asbury? Kaboom!